Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Nomal Lamba. In today's episode I am going to show you a medical talk. Subject is prevention of stroke and dementia. This talk has been arranged by Gurugram chapter of Indian Retired Welfare Association with Fortis Gurugram, and this will be delivered by the senior consultant of neurology. Friends, after the lecture by the doctor, there will be interactive question answer session between the doctor and the participants, and it is highly likely that your query, if any, will also be covered during the session. I have got a big surprise for all of you, so I request you to watch till end. Come with me. Thank you.
Two topics that are being allotted for this current session. First is stroke and second is dementia. So we'll be covering both of them briefly. So stroke, as you would be aware, basically in stroke what happens in simple terms is that the area of the blood supply, the blood vessel gets damaged. So the brain, the area in the brain, that much area of the brain will get damaged and stops working. So what it causes is basically loss of function of the brain, which is sudden in onset. So the important thing is sudden. Suddenly the person will have symptoms. He may suddenly have deviation of the face. The one side of the body can become weak or numb suddenly. Their speech can become unclear. The balance can get disrupted. So these are the acute onset: speech disturbances, motor, sensory symptoms. In certain situations, if the location of the stroke is strategically patient, then the person can become unconscious and comatose also. So whenever you have, especially at your age, most of you are of a senior age, so whenever somebody has sudden onset symptoms, sudden speaking difficulty, sudden weakness of one half, sudden onset imbalance, severe headache, vomiting, so these are warning signs of stroke. And since many of you may be aware that treatment of acute stroke is time-based, so immediately when you have some symptoms, you should immediately rush to the nearest facility where that stroke can be managed, where there is a radiology facility like our center and similar centers, wherever you are closest, you should reach them, and so that whatever acute management can be done in a time-bound fashion. So in strokes, there are, broadly speaking, two types of stroke. The first is an ischemic stroke. Ischemia means the blood vessel within that area, one blood vessel has got blocked suddenly. So if you have a pipe, the water is flowing. If there is blocked, there is a clot, something is obstructing it, so mechanically speaking, the flow is disturbed. So when the blood flow in that vessel will be blocked, that area of the brain will suddenly stop working, and then you will have those symptoms which I mentioned. The second type of stroke is hemorrhagic stroke, which simply means that the blood vessel will burst. There is too much pressure, the blood within the vessel will burst, and then blood will get collected in the brain. So this to discern whether clinically whether it is ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke is not always possible. So in this scenario, you have to go to the facility and get an urgent CT or MRI, and that will decide whether it is a ischemic stroke or hemorrhagic stroke. So now once the type has been identified, the treatment principles are slightly different. In when the blockage is there within, and the patient comes within say 4 to 6 hours, we can give certain medicines to open up the vessel. So when the clot is blocking the vessel, so we give an injection that tries to open up that clot, and if given in a time-bound fashion, it can open the clot, and varying degrees of restoration of the function are possible. In some people whose blockage is minimal, they may have full recovery. Some people may have partial recovery, but anyway, it in overall functional outcome at long term, let's say at 3 months or 6 months is improved. So that is why it is important for everyone to know, not even at your age, others in the family, that any person who is having sudden symptoms of the type which I mentioned, they should immediately rush to the nearest hospital and get the CT or the MRI scan. Okay. So, and now it is not only 4 or 6 hours, in certain cases even up to 24 hours sometimes, it may be possible to give those medicines, but that will have to be individualized. You will have the MRI will have to be reviewed by the treating neurologist, and then a decision will be taken on, in that scenario, whether giving that medicine is worthwhile. So that is important. And while in case of hemorrhagic stroke, the medicines will start, they will give medicines to reduce the blood pressure. As you know, I will be commenting on that further. The blood pressure levels go high, so the blood pressure has to be controlled, and medicines are given to reduce the effect of swelling on the brain so that the deficit can be minimized. Okay, so now more important than treatment is prevention. Prevention of stroke, as you all know, stroke is commonly a disease of age. The most important risk factor is advanced age. As the age increases, the risk of stroke increases. But what we can modify is the risk factors. The most important is blood pressure. So after 60-65, practically most people are hypertensive or taking blood pressure medicine. So you should regularly monitor the blood pressure at least 2 to 3 times a week and maintain a record. So that helps in the long-term control of blood pressure, and then you can follow up with the treating physician whether the blood pressure control is satisfactory or not. Then another important risk factor that needs to be managed is diabetes. If you are diabetic, then you have to optimize your blood sugar levels. They should be monitored at least once a week to see if the trend is steady, and then be on close follow-up with the concerned physician specialist for diabetes, whether it is controlled or not. So these are the two common things. Then another associated risk factor for stroke is cholesterol level. So cholesterol level, if it is high, then the risk of not only stroke but other problems like kidney damage, heart attack, those issues also become a little more likely. So managing sugar at the optimal level, both with medicines and diet, managing the blood pressure closely, monitoring it is important. And as far as the blood tests are concerned, usually most of the people at your age are getting annual blood checkup. So most of the common issues are generally picked up. They usually do the routine blood test, the kidney test, liver test, HbA1c, that is the average sugar level, then lipid profile, which tells the cholesterol level. So most of the common blood packages which usually people are doing, so usually these common issues are picked up. The only thing that you have to take an effort on is to keep a portable blood pressure machine at home and keep a track of your blood pressure, because that will need to be periodically reassessed at home. Okay, so then coming on to the general measures which are related to stroke indirectly or directly, another issue is the control of weight and physical activity. That is very important because it is often not discussed in detail, but it is important to maintain appropriate healthy weight for your age. So certain parameters are there based on the height and weight at which your desired weight should be in that range. So as far as possible, you should try to maintain the weight in that range. In order to do that, two things need to be done. The total dietary intake of calories has to be defined so that the weight is maintained. Excess intake of heavy calories will increase the weight in the long run, which is not good for not only for the heart and brain but for the rest of the body. The joints also get strained with the weight, and the impact is there. And secondly is the physical activity. So physical activity should be done regularly, at least 3 to 4 times a week. In a week, 30 to 40 minutes of medium intensity aerobic activity is generally recommended. Those who are doing it daily, it's very good. So those activities could be something like, depending on your interests and skills, swimming and cycling, simple jogging or brisk walk. Brisk walk is the most simple perhaps because it does not require any instrumentation. So you just go out, have a relaxed walk in the garden. You can do some pranayama or meditation. You can walk around. Maybe if you have the people in the group, you can have a chat with the neighbors. So you're relaxing, you're unwinding time. So since I'm trying to customize it to your age, so you can have a chat with them or friends or neighbors on phone. Or you can catch up with somebody. You can go for a walk, do a bit of stretching. So these things are helpful because when you are doing them in the long run, not only it helps you physically better, but mentally also you feel more relaxed and comfortable. So blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar, physical activity, diet, these are the most common and the tangible things which need to be controlled in order to prevent stroke. Rest is that you should know how to recognize stroke as in it occurs. So as I mentioned previously, any sudden onset of difficulty in speaking, inability to maintain the balance, sudden weakness of one of the body, suddenly person having dizziness, which is called vertigo, or sometimes rarely a blackout or something. So any person who is acutely having some fresh brain symptoms, you should be rushing to the blood thinner at home ki wo heart attack or jaise clot khul jayega. Those things in brain should not be done because in certain situations giving the blood thinner could be dangerous. So going to the hospital and doing a scan is more important so that you can decide the optimal treatment in the acute situation. So stroke as it occurs and as stroke is a continuum for dementia. Now when you go to dementia, things are somewhat overlapping. People who have recurrent strokes, like means somebody having stroke every 1 or 2 years. Then what happens is whenever a stroke occurs, a part of the area of the brain is damaged. And the important thing to understand is that whenever it recovers, 100% recovery may not take place. So suppose if the first stroke reduces the reserve of the brain from 100 to 90%, maybe 5% comes back. So after 3 months, 95% reserve may be there. The 5% may not come back. So if a person is not controlling the underlying risk factors, he is not following the medical advice, not taking the medicine regularly, so stroke can become more frequent. Then what happens in this scenario is then that not only dementia but the other reserves of the brain can get disturbed, so which can create problem for you. Okay, so this is as far as general aspects of stroke are concerned. So I will also brief you about dementia and then we can take up the questions together so that whatever clarifications from your perspective are there, we can try to solve them. So dementia, as you may be knowing, dementia is basically what? Aging. Every part of the brain ages with time, as you're aware. The joints, the heart, the kidney. Same way the brain is also aging. So as the brain starts aging, the reserve of the brain goes down. These are age-related changes. So when the brain, the cells are called neurons. So as the neurons, the activity goes down, the brain starts shrinking. So when it is a little bit on the average side, it is called benign senescence. That is mild forgetfulness that many people after 60, 70 report that, okay, I forgot once in a while, I could not recall this person's name, I could not recall where I kept the keys. So this is benign. Once in a while, once in 2 weeks, once a month. But when these things become more frequent and they keep worsening over time, so then you have to alarm that it may be the onset of dementia. So often the person having dementia may not be aware. It may be the relative or the spouse or the children. They may point out that now he's forgetting things. He's not able to maintain things in normal tempo. He's not able to maintain track of his finances, records of whatever activity that person was doing previously at a good level. He's not able to do at a mental level. So that can be the earliest clue that the person may be having dementia. So now the interesting thing about dementia is that as at older age, commonly dementia is degenerative, which is age-related. So we cannot completely cure it, but with medications we can stabilize it to some extent. So the common word used for is Alzheimer's type of dementia. And then there are certain other types of dementia. Another common type that especially in Asia is vascular dementia, that is linked to long-term blood pressure and cholesterol, diabetes. So those who are having high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, high levels, so they are at high risk of having vascular dementia. But clinically the symptoms for both will be similar, although the pattern of evolution which they evolve may be slightly different. So these are the two common types of dementia, but important thing to remember is in certain patients who look like dementia, there may be another 10 to 20%, there may be certain causes which are treatable. Like for example, some people may be having thyroid disease. So when a person is dementia, who is being suspected of dementia, we have to do a thorough comprehensive evaluation to look for any underlying treatable causes. In certain cases, something trivial as a vitamin deficiency could be triggering that dementia-like symptom which may be treatable. So if we identify those few treatable causes, the dementia may be largely improved. But after a certain age, dementia is degenerative and it may not recover to the extent that we said, but still with medical treatment, with supportive treatment, the quality of life can be optimized. Okay, so again, as far as prevention of dementia is concerned, again the similar thing, the most critical factor as far as the scientific literature is concerned is blood pressure control. So it is the data says that after 40 to 45 years of age, the blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, the larger, the higher value should be less than 130. So again, if you are maintaining your blood pressure meticulously and controlling it with medication, physical activity, then there is a fair chance that you are preventing dementia to some extent. So this is one. Then another perspective is the effect of diet. Diet should be, from perspective of dementia, diet should be having adequate exposure to vitamins and minerals. So having adequate amount of fresh fruits and vegetables will be very helpful to you because they have a lot of antioxidants, vitamin C, so which are believed to reduce the amount of damage in the brain. As we also know, there are molecules called reactive oxygen species or oxygen-free radicals you may have heard about. So those things are active in the brain, and with aging, they become more active. So they not only cause damage in the heart, the blood vessel, they are also involved in aging of the brain, due to which the brain's capacity to work at its level and it is young, it gets reduced. So if you take good intake of 2 or 3 servings of fresh fruits, vegetables, salads, they are helpful because they give you vitamins and minerals. They may delay the onset of dementia. Then again, blood pressure you have to monitor, and you have to maintain your weight in the optimal range. So all these things are interrelated. If we now you trying to visualize them together in a comprehensive way, we will understand that these all things overlap with each other. So optimal weight control, regular physical activity, monitoring your blood pressure, if you are diabetic, keeping a tab on sugar and cholesterol, dietary management. So all these things are important, not only for stroke and dementia, but for overall health also. They help you maintain the health of kidneys also, help of the heart also. So these are very common things which are instrumental in maintaining health of most of the organs at older age. So if you incorporate them into your daily routine, things will be better for you. Okay, so having a healthy diet now, calories also, if calories should be proportionate to the amount of physical activity. As with age, the amount of physical activity usually tends to go down. So like suppose the person is retired, so the person who is going to office, obviously he's walking to the office, moving around, so he's doing more activity. So if after a time when a person is not moving around, then they should try to make some routine in which they walk around, maybe gather in a group, talk to each other, join some activity or some club. So those things mentally engage you. So it is also said that if you're mentally active, even in the later years, it reduces the rate of dementia. So as we say, a common example I'll give is, if a car is not run for 2 weeks, the battery will drain down. The same is for the brain. Brain is also circuits, electrical circuits. So if you keep using your circuits, the circuits will work well, speaking in a true way. And if you don't use them, so even if you see the scientific data, people who are after retirement are engaged in some activity. It could be as trivial as something like talking to each other, joining a laughter club, some people like that. Some people play tambola, some people join some hobbies like cooking, music, dance, exercise, yoga, lot of things are done. So those things if you're doing, they are helping not only maintaining a healthy routine, a disciplined routine, but also helps the brain to remain relatively healthy. Because now the brain activity, we are using it, the brain is being channelized, so brain is healthy. So these are the things which you can do in your routine, in your own way, by customization, which will help you reduce the rate of dementia. These are also come up which are helpful in treating dementia, and they do give out reasonable benefit. I will not say that we can cure it, but yes, in the early stages, significant benefit we can attain by using those drugs. and you can go under monitoring, and then there are support groups for mentioned. Things are evolving now as the population, aging population in India is increasing more like the Western countries. So now support systems, support groups, they are becoming available through which people get together and they try to understand the issues and then they try to help. Either then there are then following up with counselors, psychiatrists also help because a lot of psychiatric symptoms are dementia. Patients have depression because of that. Then even another factor that you often miss is the stress to the family. A person is disease order, but the family member also are tense about it. So counseling for them also is important. So these are my views from a general perspective regarding stroke and dementia. Now, if anybody has any specific queries, I will like to address them.
Do you mention anything about pulse rate?
Pulse rate, sir, pulse rate.
For people like us, mostly senior citizens.
Yeah, correct.
The pulse rate can vary from 60 to 100
Yeah.
per minute.
Yeah, the pulse
Now,
rate.
if the pulse rate is higher, you have a more problem.
Yes, so
If it is
how?
lower, it is better.
Yeah, so that depends on, there is a concept of vagal tone. So that is applicable from younger age. It is seen that people who are doing, especially now, let's look at an extreme example, athletics, people who are doing athletics, who are into sports, who play for the Olympics, their vagal tone is very high. So if you do more physical activity, there is a nerve called vagus, which becomes overactive and that keeps the heart rate lower. So scientific data shows that what study is saying is that people whose resting heart rate from a younger age, say from 30s, 40s is lower, 50, 60, 70, their heart cardiac, specifically the cardiac health is slightly, there are greater risk of having heart issues. So it is just an indirect indicator of the overall health of the nerves which are supplying the heart. So that's how put it scientifically, but his perspective is correct. If your resting heart rate without medicines is low and you are not having the symptoms, suppose your resting heart rate at the age of 50, 60, 60, 62, 55, somewhere between 55 to 65, that means your vagal tone is high, your physical activity level is probably good, and that is a good sign as far as the overall cardiac health is concerned. Yeah, that's true.
See,
Yes.
I remember I was attending a program in Columbia University in New York
Correct.
8 years ago, and there a professor came up and gave some details, and he said, we picked up 360 people of the age of 50, 51 and checked up their heart rate. Their heart rate was, resting heart rate was 100 to 110. And he said, we told all those 360 people, you will not live for more than 10, 11 years. And when actually it happened, almost all of them passed away at the age of 61, 62.
Yes, that is correct, because as I told you that if resting heart rate is more than 100, that means the person is probably having some untreated disease, like some cardiac disease, some rhythm disturbance, some hypertension which is not controlled. So obviously, if at rest the heart rate is 100, so imagine what if you start jogging, it will go to 150 plus and anything can happen. So definitely, your point is well taken, so that's correct. So that's a marker for overall cardiac health and the vagal tone. Yeah, correct.
What you do in case there is a lower pulse rate. About 3 weeks back, I was at home and I felt the pulse had gone down to 23, and I felt it, and I measured it with the pulse meter. It was 23 exactly.
Okay.
Then I went to the doctor and the thing. But what one should do?
If your pulse, at the time you noted the pulse rate, were you having any symptoms like dizziness or blackout, something uneasiness, something you were feeling, or it was just incidental?
No, I didn't feel anything. But yes, there was a feeling in the heart. Yes, there is something wrong.
Yes.
So instead of moving around here and there or going for a morning walk, I prefer to take rest.
Yeah, correct. If your heart rate is below 40 to 45, definitely something is wrong. It could be related to some medicine for blood pressure. Certain blood pressure medicines lower the heart rate. It could be the exaggerated response. Secondly, it could be the indicator of some fresh onset disease called heart block, in which the conducting nerves in the heart get disrupted. So that can be reason. Definitely, you should not exert. Lie down quietly, and better to call for an ambulance and reach the hospital emergency on a priority basis. So heart rate less than 40 is definitely an alarm bell for us. Definitely.
And I am also a patient who felt in 2020 my pulse rate went to 225.
Oh,
That is also catastrophic. More than heart rate, more than 120, more than 110, 120 in a resting person who is otherwise not anxious, who is otherwise feeling like we are sitting calmly, is also an indicator that something is wrong. The causes could be any number, but it is an indicator that you need to be checked. 220, most likely there's some heart rhythm disturbance. So you need to reach the emergency of the hospital ASAP. Yeah, correct.
after heavy exercise
Because
or
of age-related changes in the heart as well as the blood vessels. So this parameter which sir pointed out helps in assessing how much intense exercise you can safely tolerate. So this is from that perspective, yes. So as your age increases, you should mild to medium intensity exercise for short duration, and obviously in a comfortable environment. If the weather is like nowadays is very humid, it should be preferably in the night time or in the early morning when the temperature is more amicable. Another thing, during exercise you have to take care that you should not get dehydrated. You should have adequate dehydration, especially you can have something like lassi, nimbu pani, whatever. Some sodium, potassium should get into the body. You should not that aged person who is taking BP medicine, he starts sweating excessively and then collapses. That will not be good. So you have to do physical activity tuned to your body. And suppose someone has arthritis, so we cannot give a general answer. It all depends on the overall health of the person and the comorbidities here. Just a simple walk. So you have to customize your body. Your nature has blessed you with a body, and God has made a body which senses what is wrong. So if your gut feeling tells something is wrong, then always double check, cross check it and go easy. Yeah, that's true. So if your body is feeling stressed out that when you're exercising you suddenly become breathless, you are feeling something under, then obviously something is wrong. Stop exercising and get medical attention.
The reason I'm asking is that let's say it is 150 or so, can one manage without the BP medicine?
Sir, look, as far as if you go through the scientific data, the common cutoff which is given is the blood pressure should be less than 130 systolic and less than 85 diastolic. So if your values are borderline like 130, 80, 84 or plus minus 2, 3, then you can repeat 2, 3 equations. If it still remains high, you should start medicine under supervision of a doctor. But if it is 150, but then look, suppose randomly you check 150, suppose, but you have to see the temporal association. If you have driven or you have done some exercise for 20-30 minutes, the blood pressure will be high. So the blood pressure ideally should be checked in resting conditions, preferably in the early morning hours. That's what we recommend, because that time the body is relaxed. We aim to know the resting blood pressure. Anybody who will get angry, who will run or dance, BP will normally also go up. So it should be the resting blood pressure. But if it is 150 systolic and repeated 2 occasions, you may repeat it after 1 or 2 hours or 1 or 2 days, but that means that you require treatment for that.
But I'm told
You will have to see how it is vis-a-vis the previous blood pressure level. So if it was previously also 130, 140, so maybe a little fine tuning of the medicines in a slow way may optimize it. But above 150 definitely it's preferred to avoid. Yeah.
But there's also myths or
Because stress levels are quite high. So after 60, most people, if not all, will be hypertensive. Maybe the rare people who are living in the villages or in sages who are there, who are staying in the Himalayas, those areas they may be because their lives are stress-free relatively, if I can put it. So if your blood pressure is high, there is no harm in keeping it under control, but definitely it needs to be monitored. Yes, any cognitive exercise appropriate to your age will help in reducing dementia. What exercise you mentioned, they also are helpful, as long as you enjoy them. You should be enjoying them. It should not be a pressure. If you like to sing, you sing. If you like to draw puzzles, you draw puzzles. If you like to do mathematical equations or maths quiz, some people are mathematically very proficient who are of a financial background, you do that. It should be an enjoyable task and you should involve your brain actively. That is the thing. So whatever fits that bill, you can do. People like to dance. If you are people who are physically more active, they're not having any major back or joint issues, they can do dance also. Obviously, tuned to their age, not very hectic, but yeah. So brain has to be cognitively involved. It is shown by the data that people who are cognitively involved, who have a discipline routine, like getting up, suppose you get up in the office days, people get up at 6, 7, they go for a jog, they have a cup of tea. So if you maintain a good discipline routine, you get up in time, you get ready, you groom yourself, and you look forward to the day. So you are engaging yourself right from the day beginning. So those things help in reducing dementia and depression, all those things. Yeah, that's correct. So, but the activity.
Over-prescribed medicines, like I am a heart patient, they give overdoses, and that is also more harmful.
The overdose I cannot generalize, but the overdose effect will depend on the type of medicine.
And Rosu was their doctor was prescribing 20 mg. And it was coming to 40-50 level LDL, low cholesterol.
Initially,
so I reduced it to 10 and then to 5. Still it is at 60-70 level, much below 100 recommended.
the reason, I'll tell you the
Why
rationale.
they should prescribe so high dose?
At initial stage, the reason for that is whenever you are initiating statin therapy, statins are anti-inflammatory, they reduce the inflammation in the cholesterol plaques, which are at risk of rupturing, which can cause heart attack, brain stroke. So initially, a high dose for 3 to 6 months is preferred because it rapidly reduces the inflammatory changes in the plaque, which reducing the risk of events. But yes, you are correct. After 6 months, if you repeat the lipid is better, then Rosuvastatin should be reduced to 10. And if it still remains better after 3 to 6 months, you can reduce to 5. Then a low dose maintenance is good enough to maintain the plaque stable. So you are partly correct, but initially you need high dose to reduce the risk of events rapidly, and later the low dose will be sufficient. That's correct. Do not reduce cholesterol. Blood thinners reduce the tendency of clotting of blood in the small blood vessels. So cholesterol is reduced by statins, like sir mentioned, Rosuvastatin, Atorvastatin. These are the common molecules in India. So they act on the cholesterol plaque. When you see if you see the pathology of all these diseases, there is a disease called atherosclerosis. It means, simply speaking, cholesterol and other molecules get deposited in the blood vessel. The wall is like this. So it will get deposited in the inside. It will become narrow now. So when the narrowing will reach a critical level, then you will have that event, depending on the weather. It could be heart attack, it could be a stroke. So the plaque, both the medicines are important. The plaque contains some platelets and other blood elements whose aggregation is reduced by the blood thinners, and the other element is cholesterol. So both medicines need to be given to control that disease process in the judicious doses, obviously.
Like these days, doctor recommend that you keep on taking blood thinners irrespective of.
So, sir, speaking from a scientific perspective, if a person, say, let me do 2-3 examples. Person who is at age of 50 years of age, let me take one example. We'll take different scenarios, we cannot generalize it. So, 50-year-old man, blood pressure normal, sugar normal, cholesterol normal, non-smoker, no heart disease. He does not require anything, just he should maintain his healthy lifestyle. He should get his annual blood checkups and be in contact with the physician, does not need. Person at 60 years of age having risk factors. So that is what the concept of risk factors. He is diabetic, he has high blood pressure, he has high cholesterol, he is smoker. If he has 2 or more of the risk factors, after and his age is more than 50, he should take blood thinners. But a perfectly healthy person, some person was saying in a village, who walks 10 kilometers a day, carries 20 kg, who is very thin built and does not have any risk factors on evaluation, then he will not take. Because you should understand that blood thinners, there is a complication of bleeding also. So you have to weigh, as I told you, risk-benefit ratio. So if you have risk factors for heart disease and stroke after the age of 50 years, then blood thinners will be warranted. But again, we need to individualize it. So the more the number of risk factors, the greater the chances that you will require blood thinners. But if your BP is okay, your sugar and cholesterol is okay, your weight is okay, and you are physically active, then the need for blood thinners will be definitely lower. That is what the scientific data says. Because then the risk of mortality due to bleeding complications, like bleeding from the stomach, bleeding in the brain, the risk is more than the benefit. But if you have risk factors for these events, definitely blood thinners will be. So there is no simple answer to this question. We have to individualize your situation. Yes, so
Is it a symbol of dementia?
yeah, it could be the early stage of dementia, but as I told you, if dementia technically we say is the later stage of disease at which the person is, the memory loss is so much that the person is unable to maintain his own affairs. Some leads well. So in early stage of dementia, yes, you are correct, it could miss sinus severity remain similar. It may be just age-related benign senescence, what we call it, which most people have. But if it worsens over time, then definitely it is indicating that early dementia status. So we have to see the progression of the symptomatology over the next few months.
As part of giving my example, since the age of 50, I find that I forgetting the names and all that, and that's sustained to the age present of 73. Is that continues to be a benign thing, or is a cause of
Sir, if
dementia thing?
the severity of a symptoms is confined to only that domain and other domains are intact, that is age-related benign senescence only mostly. But if your symptoms become more severe, you forget your way, you're forgetting things where you kept the things, and those symptoms become more frequent and other domains are involved. Look, in dementia, the cognitive domains are multiple, which are complex functions. You may not recall them, but these are like suppose you should know the person with dementia may start driving the car and he may get lost. He may go 2 blocks away and park at an unknown place thinking it is his home. So in advanced dementia, people often, you will find that a message is person missing. So they are, many have dementia, they've gone for the morning walk, then they lost their way and the family could not find them.
And
So
similar,
Yes.
one more thing, symptom, whatever. Now lately, for last 4-5 years, I'm finding that spelling, forgetting spellings again is
Yes.
one thing I see.
what is your age, sir, if I can ask?
73.
Yeah, so this could be benign senescence and or it could be the early stage of dementia. But doing the lifestyle measures will help you. But if you are troubled by it, then you can come and visit one neurologist. We can do a more psychiatrist. We can do a more detailed psychological assessment to objectively define how much it is impaired. But I think only 1 or 2 domains over it, so it may still be the age-related phenomena.
Thank you.
Sir, one more thing I wanted to ask. Say any old person, he remembers everything, say 50 years old, and even which has happened 50 years or 50 years old, and very clearly. But whereas he is able to forget events which has happened
Yes,
recently.
that is what happens. The brain, there is a concept of neuronal plasticity. Whatever your long-term memories are, so memories which are from 20 years, 30 years back of your younger age childhood. So if you see from age-wise, children after age of 5 to 6 years can remember most of the emotionally pleasurable or catastrophic events. Something bad in the house, they will remember. When they grow up, something very good happened, they'll remember. Someone relative's wedding, some birthday party which was good, or some untimely demise of some relative. So longer events are preserved in the brain because the neuronal circuits forming them have undergone repeatedly fired so that they have become more resilient to damage. So what happens in dementia is that the initial stage of memory forming for memories which are few hours to few days old, they are more vulnerable because they are not registered at the molecular level in the deeper circuits of the brain. I'll give you a simple example. A person, he does not drive for 10 years, but if you at 40 years you make him drive again, he will be able to drive. Why? Because those things he learned between 15 to 20, they are embedded in his circuits and he will be able to drive. So you may have observed in life. For example, cycling. If you have learned cycling between 5 to 20 years and then you stop cycling after 15 years, somebody says you to cycle, you will do it. Same is for swimming. So the reason is those things are embedded in your circuits day behind functionally, and they are very difficult to lose unless there is some catastrophic brain damage. So the same thing happens in dementia. What old things you have learned, the names of your children, the names of your grandchildren, the names of your spouse, your address, other new things we will usually remember. But what you ate 2 hours back, what you told 10 minutes back, that is likely to be forgotten. So that is what happens in dementia. It is a short-term memory loss basically, functionally. Long-term memories are usually by and large refractory to loss, at least in the initial stages. Later stage a little bit, when the dementia is too advanced, then only they will get involved. Technical angle, yes, because ultimately brain is also the brain is a complex network of synapses and electrical connections only. So those which are in the reserve for long, they are more hardy to be lost because there are molecular changes taking place which cannot be easily damaged. So you can understand it that way. If you go in the net, you will see mechanism, long-term compensation. So there are a lot of technical terms which you may not understand, but usually yes, the long-term memories are more resilient to damage. So they usually are the last to be damaged. So it is the early memories, short-term memories within the last few hours to days which are the ones which are impaired. So that is why somebody has kept the key in the drawer, then he forgets where I kept the key. Somebody keeps the money in the drawer, he forgets where he kept the money, whom he gave the money. So those things are the ones which are impaired, for which they may need some assistance with somebody. And previously also being cognitive, you're talking about lifestyle or dietary measures. What are you specifically in general?
No, lifestyle, dietary is all good.
Yeah.
But the only thing is forgetting names of some people, even you're close to person. That person name also sometimes I forget. Not today. I mean, I can say for the 10, 15 years also. But now it's more pronounced.
Yeah, so that is that there is no scientific reason for that, yes, but yes, as the brain's reserve gets depleted with time, the ability to remember names becomes difficult, especially the ones which are complicated to pronounce or speak. Those are more difficult. The smaller, easier names you may recall more easily. Cognitive exercises like sir mentioned, Sudoku and those activities to engage the brain, they can reduce it to some extent.
But I think it's common. Some people remember faces more, some people remember
Yes,
names more.
the reason for that is that the circuits in the brain which are for recognizing faces and language, they are close together but not identical. So someone's area or language is impaired first, he will have more difficulty in that. If someone's area for recognizing face is involved, then that will be impaired. So those things have a varying correlation depending on which part of the area of the brain is showing the changes first. So the sequence can vary.
So what are the brain exercises? These cognitive
Yes, brain exercises can be something like noughts and crosses, then at the advanced level of puzzles, crossword puzzles in the newspaper, Sudoku, and all those. Lot of games are given, quizzes of different types, which could be a GK quiz also trying to find out the general knowledge facts, geographical facts, history facts, then reading them up. So the brain has to be active. You may be reading a book on history, you may be reading a book on geography or civil sciences, any topic of interest. So as long as you're trying to keep the brain active, so whatever is you have, that will be utilized better. That is what the scientific data shows. So and that is why doing cognitive activities of varying levels which you enjoy is good to delay and prevent dementia. Yes, whatever activity you, but as long singing, yes, it will help because singing gives you relaxation. Singing is a hobby, and if you are singing long songs and remembering the songs, and you're exercising brain by remembering all those words and the lyrics, so in that way it's good.
Even listening to music must be good.
Listening to music is good in the sense it keeps you relaxed. It makes you feel happy. It may be linked to certain good memories in your past life, so it has multiple benefits. And if you will try to recall what was linked to that music, it may make you mentally more relaxed. So in that way it's good. So but I cannot say that listening to music reduces dementia. It is passive. Active singing is more active, but yes, listening to music is good definitely if you like it.
Okay.
In Gurgaon, Delhi it's not difficult, but in remote area it's difficult. But now the good thing is that lot of corporate hospitals are opening up in second-tier cities also. So within 100 to 200 kilometers, there is a fair probability that you may get a center at which at least a radiologist setup is there. The one exception could be very remote, hilly areas. There it may be difficult. So there the logistics of airlifting, etc. may have to be different, because in those areas driving the mountains is very slow. So that will waste time. Yes. But to the plains, things are not that bad. You can reach. Now, if you go to the periphery also, then tier 2 cities, lot of centers are coming up where you have radiology. So things are not that bad now.
So carrying the patient to the nearest hospital, because either somebody immediately can carry in the car, whether he should.
If the person is having some minor symptom, person is unconscious and has a minor deficit, then they can be taken down rapidly. Then you can.
No. Whether he should be carried.
Position you are talking about.
Position I'm talking.
Position. Preferably, if the patient is lying down, it is better, because it is believed that that will improve the blood pressure of flow to the brain. Yeah. So that, although that is not rigidly applicable, but from a broad perspective, person is lying down is slightly better, because that increases the flow to the brain. Till the time we know, do the MRI, know what type of stroke it is.
I think in the heart attack it is opposite. He should not.
Heart attack, I am not sure of the position. Yes, but if the person feels heart attack, it's more about comfort. If the person is more comfortable lying down, you can lie down, you can sit also. That is not too much. But in the brain, lying down is better, if possible, yeah, because the flow to the brain is slightly better. The first important thing, weight. Weight needs to be proportional to height. Someone who is 6 feet 6 inches tall, 80 kg may be less weight. So the BMI is more important. So these are just broad indicators which help in maintaining or motivating people to maintain weight proportionate to the height. A person whose height is more, a higher weight will be tolerable for him, whereas because the body mass index, BMI, that is more accurate. BMI is a more accurate indicator of your weight in concordance to height, because it calculates both based on the height and the weight. So you have a lot of calculators available. You can use the BMI calculators on the net to find out. That is more accurate.
Divided by height square in meters.
Yeah. So this is one of the yeah.
It
So
should be
don't
about
have.
2.5.
Yeah, these are broad indicators to help. What the important thing you have to remember is that you should not take height or weight in isolation. Both the parameter, whatever you choose, both height and weight should be taken together, because the ideal body weight will depend on the height. That is what you have to remember. So if the person is tall, his ideal body weight will be for some person, very tall person, 80 kg may be a normal weight also. So you have to see in correlation to height. But yes, for Indian population whose height is lower, 80 kg would be definitely higher. Most people of that weight would be over it, because the average height is lower. That's the. So you have to correlate with the height and weight both. And another important indicator, especially in Indian and Asian communities, is the waist hip ratio. That is another parameter. So that indicates amount of abdominal fat that is related to the risk of having various complications like heart attack, stroke, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. So these are continuum. So the abdominal fat should be not very high. If the person is having a lot of fat in the abdominal areas, that is also an indicator of higher risk of complications due to these diseases.
Or Dixit, our knowledge.
Thank you.
We should all clap. And one thing good about his speaking so well about dementia and all that, I didn't forget his name. And because incidentally, I too also feel that these points and the interest which has generated among our friends here indicates how well the things have been delivered, to see that next time when we are again somewhere, we are with an improved situation as far as knowledge on stroke is concerned, and precautions for seeing that we prevent dementia in most of our people's age, which is 60, 70, and we have few which is close to 70. 80, sorry.
Yes.
Like one Mr. Williams, who has come all the way from Bhiwadi to listen to you and need us here. So once again, thank you very much, and he deserves all applause once again.
Thank you.
So any other queries that anybody is having, so we can.
Still, if somebody has a query,
Any questions cropping up in your mind, so we'll try to solve
Dr.
them.
Rahul is here
Yes.
to join us.
Yes, sir. Sir, in case of heart attack, raising of feet may be helpful in the sense that the blood flow to the heart is increased. So you can raise the heart, you can place a pillow or cushion below the feet, that can be helpful. Yeah, you may do that, yeah. That because it increases the blood flow back to the heart. So the strain on the heart gets a little better. A little bit benefit when do lot of night shift duties in different organizations also their health is on definitely is bad. Bad in the sense that their body rhythm gets disturbed. So that affects the other systems like it increases the risk of high blood pressure, sugar, heart attack, everything. So following a disciplined routine, not only in terms of meals, in terms of physical routine, in terms of sleep routine also is very critical. So that needs to maintain. And if the person, like you can say, simple from a scientific perspective, birds is, they awake at sunrise and they sleep by sunset. As a simple example. So these are some small things which we learn from other organisms also, and to learn to be disciplined. So definitely this point helps. Yeah, because your body routine is more predictable, so the health is better. That's true.
Dr. Vikas, we have one question from our friend Mr. Williams. He says that since his eyesight problem has occurred, and now at his age of 80, he finds that walking is causing some problem. So is that to do with the brain activity, or is that, madam, correct?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
can you just say something about that?
So vision, it depends on how much.
No, his vision is zero now.
Oh, okay.
And what he is telling that
Mhm.
now he is even facing some problem walking and all that. So his legs.
Let him talk, let him talk.
You want to say something?
I think if you can talk, it will be better. Yeah.
Speak in this.
My dear sir, as my friend colleague said, I am touching 80, I am almost blind, 71 blind left eye, and other eye, oh, the mic is there. Now my problem is, I want races in walking also, I walk miles and miles and very fast, but now, for the last few months, I am not able to step, because so weakness, because the number one psychological, I would feel that I may not fall down, something like that. Is it connected with the brain, or is or weakness, or a psychological effect? Could you please explain? Thank you.
There are multiple reasons in your case. First is because of the lack of the visual input, the brain, the person obviously logically feels apprehensive that they may not fall. So you are more cautious. That is from that angle. Then, as the age increases, the walking difficulty with aging has multiple reasons, and the intensity may vary from person to person. Some people, there are degenerative changes in the joints in the spine which reduce the flexibility of limb movement. So that also, to a certain extent, causes certain impairment of the flexibility movement and ability to negotiate turns and moving into narrow areas. So those things obviously with age become impaired. The lack of visual input is obviously making the person more apprehensive that he may fall. And in rare cases, it could be something like mild early stage of Parkinson's also. So if you get evaluated, in that some medicines may help to some extent here. So there are multiple. There can be mild nerve involvement or neuropathy. There could be milder Parkinson's at this age, which are fairly common. So though those multiple factors could be interacting some vitamin deficiency, there are many things which medicines can improve. So those things could be impairing the ability to move around.
Doctor, can you say broadly what are those evaluations which he should go under?
Evaluations, yeah, he can, I think he may be already undergoing basic blood tests. In addition, you can get vitamin B12 levels, vitamin D3 levels checked. Okay. In addition to the routine blood workup, the hemoglobin, renal function test, and thyroid profile at the next planned blood checkup, routine blood thyroid profile, and certain other markers, these can be done. So these will look for treatable causes of issues, because B12 level also causes weakness in the nerves, D3 deficiency causes muscle weakness, and these certain treatable causes may be helped. Then you can, if you want, you can have a visit with a neurologist and or a physician to assess if there are signs of any other disease which may, treatment of which may can help them. So those things could be helpful. Okay, that's great.
And after that he got the infection. He was already partially blind, but that worsened the position. And in last few months I find lot of health has become down.
Yeah, I
He was
think.
very active otherwise.
Yes. So I believe that the visual impairment has played a key role in the reduction of other things, because prior to that, as you were saying, he was he had Francis. B12 deficiency affects the brain also. It causes.
All these two tests should be carried.
Yes, yeah. These two tests are there. The good thing is that treatable. If you correct them, some improvement to varying extent is likely to be obtained. And these deficiencies are common even in younger age nowadays.
Dietitians and doctors say that you can eat fruits because it give you fructose, but not the direct sugar.
The reason for this, there are 2-3 factors. Firstly, as I told you, certain fruits, the sugar content is very high. Bananas, mangoes, grapes. So you should take only 1 or 2 small portions. So when you visit a dietitian to make the diet plan for fruits, you should specify them and be more categorical, because sometimes in a hurry they may not tell you. You cannot have 5 mangoes at one go, especially if you're diabetic. Okay, but yes, you can have 2 apples. Other fruits like apple, oranges, mostly those fruits which sugar content is very low, that you can have more liberally. You can have 2 apples in a go, you can have 2 oranges, not much of an issue because the sugar content is very low.
What about kiwi fruit? Kiwi.
Kiwi is also, it's a very healthy fruit. If you can have it, you like the taste. The taste is a bit alkaline. For those who like it, it's a wonderful fruit. I recommend it strongly.
Been advice cornea transplant. That's one he says, I have yet to make a take on it. Then second thing is that his wife says that he is now finding some problem with the sleep also. Is that all?
Sleep related issues are fairly common this age, so if you can have a visit in a more formal setting, we can evaluate and give some medicines to improve that. But the sleep deficiency can be due to many reasons, age-related anxiety or some other issue, so that is multiple reasons. And as far as the corneal transplant is concerned, if the sole cause of vision loss is a corneal issue, then corneal transplant may be worthwhile. So it will depend, the ophthalmologist has to assess whether that is the sole cause. There is some disease. Suppose he has some retinal problem also, then it may not be helpful. It will depend on the cause
I
actually.
think these guys will not leave you. You better go back to your duties, and that's important. This is something to keep timelines. We should appreciate at our age. This is not lighter side. It's our pleasure. See the senior doctor Rahul Bhargav, who is
Friends, I hope you have watched this episode till end and have found something useful for you. So the surprise which I told you earlier is that in the next episode I'm going to show you a different type of KYC. This KYC is Know Your Colleagues. During this session, all the participants will be asked to describe their lifestyle post-retirement. Friends, since many of the participants have retired from very senior positions and some from middle level positions, so it is quite likely that you might also gain something from their experiences. So please wait for the next episode. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thanks once again.